What's up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of Say That to Say This. Man, I am excited to be with y'all today. It's your man, Jason Watson.
What's going on, everybody? Josh Wilson.
And we got a special guest with us, man. I'm going to let him introduce himself.
Put your hands together.
Just Kenny Petty. That's it.
His man, you know, this is the brother I wanted to be like growing up. Y'all will learn a little bit more about him later on, man. But excited to be here with y'all, man. Another episode. Word and drug us into the studio because sometimes we be running a little raggedy trying to get up in here.
Making us look good, too.
But really excited to be here, man. So how y'all feeling, man? How things going today?
Beautiful day, man. Excellent. Had me some good Chinooks cooked fish. I'm feeling great.
Bro, did it right, man. I haven't quite gotten to lunch yet, but I'm following up here after this is over. So,
man. Oh, so that was your Euro you brought in.
Yeah. So we're going to have to talk fast.
If y'all want to know how important this podcast is, Josh literally set his lunch to the side to make this happen.
I didn't think they were going to be
Now, that's leadership. That's leadership.
I didn't think they were going to be fat jokes on this podcast, but
well, man, y'all know we like to try our best to shoot some elephants in the room, talk about things that people may not expect us to talk about. And today we just thought it would be good to jump out ahead and talk a little bit about violence interruption and some of the work that we are looking forward to doing in this particular space. Let's just start talking about like what we see in the city, like the violence we've seen and how we've been impacted by the violence that we've kind of just seen going on in the city overall.
Yeah, I mean, it was knowledge of violence that put me in this space, right? That really kind of led to Mission St. Louis getting its start. I'll never forget when I first came here. I was working on the near north side and was going into a lot of schools, doing a lot of like leadership development, conflict management, that sort of thing. And what that looked like for me was going into a school setting, getting a group of students together and opening up conversation, just getting people to talk. And so, I mean, you know how weird middle school was. Everybody's awkward. Nobody really wants to talk. And so I walked into a classroom and just basically was like, hey, we got to get people talking. What if you could make up a superhero? Who's your favorite superhero? Or if you could make up your own, what would you want to be? And so got everybody talking there. And then that lasted about the first 30 minutes of the school session, of the class. The last 30 minutes, I asked like more heart penetrating questions. Like, hey, if you could sit down with somebody past, present, or future, who would you want to share a meal with? And there was that moment that changed my life forever. Sixth grade little girl raises her hand, starts to cry. And she was like, man, my brother. I'm like, dope. Like, you know, you want to share a meal with your brother. Like, tell me why. That sounds really powerful. And she was like, because 2 months ago he was shot in my front yard and I watched it happen. And you know, she just begins to obviously weep as she talked about making that phone call, holding her brother while she was waiting for the ambulance to show up. And one, I'm blown away by the courage that it would take to share a story that personal, but I'll never forget looking around that room. And, you know, every time I share the story, somebody always is like, well, yeah, everybody just expected that. Like, no. There was deep empathy. There was deep sympathy. But what flowed from that story was people going like, man, that happens all the time. Like that's common. That's something that I'm used to. And man, for me, I'll never forget sitting in my car trying to back out of the parking lot and just losing it. Just going like, man, we should not be reacting this way about something so devastating.
You said it, Josh. I mean, for me, and like you said, man, common, just growing up in the city, man, I grew up right over on Labadee and St. Louis Avenue. And I remember, I mean, violence, when you talk about violence, I don't think we shared this before. It's not like a topic. It's just something you kind of born into. Man. I mean, there's levels to it, you know what I'm saying? So fighting and that type of stuff, that was so common just growing up. But I remember the first time I saw somebody be killed, I was like 7 years old looking out the window. And the dude in the neighborhood, 3 guys was fighting, and one dude pulled out a jack and hit hit a guy, and I just saw his body go limp,
Oh.
and everybody in the neighborhood knew him, and that was the first actual death I've seen. And so, man, that was what, I'm 49 now. It ain't enough fingers, ain't enough toes, ain't enough probably hairs on my body to count. And it's over exaggeration, but really to count how many times, how many friends have been killed, how many people that I know, how many things I've seen literally with my own eyes. And then to my own shame, how I've been a part of some of the violence and producing some violence that came from me. So it's something, man.
It's crazy, man, because, you know, depending on how you grow up, where you come from, that's going to impact your response and interaction with violence. Because I just think about even when I was young going to school, every school you go to in the inner city in St. Louis, you pretty much know you're going to fight when you get there. You know what I mean? That's just a part of it. That's the way that it go. You know what I mean? And what's crazy for me is to talk to some people and they ain't never had a fight. You know, I asked Andy, you know, who is the COO here at Mission St. Louis. He's like, I never had a fight. And that's mind blowing to me because for me, that was a way of life. You know what I mean? Because of the environment that we were in, you know?
Yeah. Kenny, you said something too, like, you know, as we talk about a conversation as meaningful as this, like you got one aspect that is like, hey, I have witnessed it. This is something personal. I've been a part of it. I've been traumatized by it. And then at the same time, like you've got community and neighborhood trauma that is also like, there is, because violence takes place, there's also a fear of walking out the front door.
Absolutely. I always say, you know, in the inner city, you feel safe. And in the suburbs, you feel safe because it's safe. In the inner city, you feel safe because you're used to it. And those are two different types of safety.
Drastically different.
You know what I mean? When you used to something and you used to certain, like you walk down the street, you know that this dude's carrying guns. It's not even a part of your framework. It's just integrated into what your life is. You know what I mean? And I think that has impact. You know, like growing up in that environment and seeing that constantly has impact. You know, when I think about the responses that I've had to, you know, seeing people lose their life, you know, things like that, and how that's changed the way I'm always expecting extreme violence.
Right.
So I'm like prepped for that. And I think about my mindset then, and that's pretty much how it was.
What your normal is.
Correct. Right. My normal is already somebody else's extreme.
Exactly right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly right.
You said something, the extreme violence. We know from experience, something can start off so small.
Man.
So when you watch it, like you can be in the neighborhood, you could see an argument ensue. You almost know like this could be bad. Right. Just with a simple argument, a disagreement. You know this thing could escalate quickly into something extreme.
No, it's very, very true, man. And so when I think about violence and I think about some of the work that we're going to be able to do, and we'll talk a little bit about that, it makes me kind of think a little bit about like the causes of some, like, so I try to think about both sides of the fence, right? Like, so I always tell people when you're an individual who lives in a community and someone has taken a life of your cousin, your brother, your uncle, whoever, where we're from, I might walk to the corner store and see the individual that killed my brother. You know what I mean? And that means that now I need to have, how do I respond in that space? Yep. You know what I mean? So some of what we see when we see the violence in these communities is from years and years of bloodshed and individuals feeling like, quote unquote, I want my lick back because of what I've experienced. Yep. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's a piece of that too, that I feel like gets oversimplified as far as solutions.
Absolutely.
Right? Like you can easily hear anecdote after anecdote that's like one, move.
Right.
You don't want to see that dude move.
Right.
Right? Like that's a simple, easy, it's not reality.
It's not reality.
The other thing we hear all the time is, well, just remove guns, remove the things that are violent. That's I don't think anybody here is going like, hey, that is the solution. Now, there may be some changes that are needed, but everything also gets simplified when you don't come from that context. Like, absolutely. Because you said it right. Like my normal is drastically different than the normal that you have. So oftentimes, and there is no easy solution. I mean, our country's been struggling with this for century after century. But I do think that we need to talk about how the anecdotes aren't simple, but what is needed?
Yeah,
How do you begin to address? You got to do something,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, everything, I look at everything like this. We got to look at when we thinking about an expected end or trying to get to a solution, what are the first steps? What is easy, what's obvious, and what's strategic to get us there?
Man, say that again.
What's easy, what's obvious, and what's strategic.
I like
and
that.
I think even, man,
like
without even subconsciously, that's what, for you starting, as you started Mission St. Louis, there were steps like, okay, there was a cue in you that said, hey, something has to be done.
Right.
Now, obviously, it's going on now to be something much bigger than what you probably expected
100%.
to be, but you started off with something easy, just whatever, and I don't know what that is, and then it was some obvious steps you took, and then strategically, you began to go to the place where, man, now we're having an effect.
Right.
So those are the things that we talk about, like when me and Jay, we sit and thinking about, okay, what are the first steps? What are we going to do
Right.
when we thinking about how to create a culture that invades the culture of violence?
Absolutely. No, that's 100% true. And I think that the way that impacts us, when I think about, violence interruption and some of the work that, first, let me just start by commending the individuals who have been out here doing this work. I know that often it could feel like there aren't people in the trenches doing anything, because you hear that statement often, nobody's doing nothing in the city. And we've had the pleasure of meeting some amazing men and women who are committed to doing violence interruption work. And I want to give a definition of what we mean by that when we're talking about violence interruption work, so that individuals watching can have an understanding. Typically, people who are violence interrupters come from the communities that they are particularly targeting. Normally, they are the individuals who played a role in the violence that we see taking place, who have now chosen to give their life to utilizing their relationships, all of those things to build with individuals in the community to make sure to either intervene, to de-escalate, or primarily to prevent situations from happening. Those violence interrupters are typically the guys that's out there between the hours of 7 p.m. to, sometimes 2 a.m., right? And when guys are pulling guns out, these are the dudes that are there saying, man, don't do this. This does not need to happen. There are real people out here who are giving their time and energy to that work. Can y'all just speak a little bit to how that has been, meeting some of those individuals, hearing about some of that work? How has that spoke to you just to this point?
Let me, because I want you to talk on that. I want to make sure too that we're painting the right picture, and what you just said is absolutely clear. Unfortunately, we are in a city where there is an expectation that violence is always going to happen, that there is an expectation that there are parts of our city that you're never going to go to, want to be allowed in, wouldn't like that is there. At the same time, there is constantly critique that there is nothing happening, that there is a limited amount of beauty and peace and good that is there. And Jason, what you just said is absolutely true. Like there are currently people that have said, hey, I love my city so much that I am, not only do I want to do this work, I'm willing to do this work, and I am out there making sure that people know that they are loved, that there's resources that are out there that are walking into very traumatic, very difficult situations and doing unbelievable amount of work. So whenever I hear somebody say like, hey, nobody's doing anything, man, you've got to be able to point to the work that many of the individuals that you're about to hear about have laid their life down for. So, man, one, we've got to be really, really careful that we overlook, I would say, superheroes that are already in our street doing this work.
And go ahead. And what's the crazy thing about that is that, man, meeting these guys and seeing their passion and their heart, like these are dudes who are walking up on 30, 40 people where something's about to go on and they like, I'm not going to let this happen.
Yep.
These are dudes who are utilizing their relationships for when they were in the streets to say, hey, man, like, let's find a way to not take this to this space. And sometimes it can be an unrewarding work because for the onlooker, we're saying, when is this going to stop? Right. And for us, success might look like when this doesn't exist anymore. And that may not be a reality for the individual that's in the trenches doing the work.
That's right.
So we just wanted to take some time to commend those violence interrupters who have, worked in the city and in some ways have received some critique that may not be contextual. Critique that may not be properly contextual, because these guys are committed their lives to this work, for sure.
Yeah, man. As we sat in that room, man, when I met these brothers, and I'm, at this stage of my life, I look for leadership. I look for men that would I follow him? When I was in my element, and I told them this, I said, these are men that if these type of men would have been in the hood, because men raised you. And guys in the hood that took us in, that loved on us, that put stuff in our hands, and we did certain things. But these men, man, with their passion, and man, I literally see these men as being culture changers in these communities, man. And it's so awesome, man, that you see the passion, you see the leadership, and I'm like, bro, it caused me to say there is hope for this thing. There is real hope.
That's right. And I think you can't listen to this podcast for the seasons that you've listened to without knowing and understanding that we believe the solution to many of the issues that are happening in our community is due to relationship.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, relationship is key. It's what we hang our hat on at Mission St. Louis. And we see the benefit, like we see lives transformed because of what you just said. Somebody saying like, hey, I'm going to take an interest in you. I want to love you. I want to care for you. I want to get to know you. I want to share my story with you and hear your story. And I would say at the very bare root, and it is far more complicated than this, but you also have individuals that are saying, hey, not only do I want to be out on the street, but like, the work isn't just walking in and intervening in a high crisis situation. The work isn't just going in and saying like, hey, I know this just happened to you, don't retaliate. The work of this is saying, hey, how do I be on the street, building relationships, say, hey, I want to know you. Tell me what's going on. Tell me what's happening in your life. Tell me what people are celebrating in this community. Tell me what people are fearful of. Like, that happens constantly. And yes, you're exactly right. You've got guys that are like, man, you call me anytime, I will be there. But the work of this is saying, hey, I am out there to build relationship, to help, to get to know folks inside of a community, but also to build those bridges inside of those communities, because we know violence goes down, education scores go, all of the beauty comes from relationship and being invested in. And there's a lot that happens in the midst of
Josh, when you're talking, like, see, I commend that, because see, that's the beauty of what we want to accomplish. Obviously, there is an agenda to, minimize violence. But our heart is to go beyond that. Now, obviously, we're going to do all we can to prepare men to do exactly what they're called to do. But we're an organization that I'm proud of that's willing to go the extra mile and say, now what? Now what do we do with these individuals that we've asked to start putting the gun down? What can we now put in their hand that would be productive? You know what I'm saying? And so that's what really gets my blood.
But programs are not the solution.
Correct.
The right strategy isn't the solution. The solution is heart change. The solution is relationship.
Absolutely.
And that, I mean, if there's a tagline for what violent interruption might be and why Mission St. Louis would get involved in it in the way that it is, it's because of that. It's like, hey, what does it look like to pay people to go out and say, man, I love this city. I love this community. It's your story. It's your story of like, man, I know that I created harm here. I also know that I'm a part of the redemption of it. And that comes through relationship.
Let me say this too. And what you just said is so true about the relationship piece. And that's why, I told the guys, and I commend you, bro. I commend Jason, because that's a part of his DNA. Whatever he does, nothing, I don't know nothing that's really transactional. It's always relational. And I think with leadership like that, that's going to trickle down, man. I'm excited about that too. So I commend you for your leadership.
Man, I appreciate that. I think that's a great segue into, well, what does this mean for Mission St. Louis, right? Because the question may be, Mission St. Louis has done workforce development. We've done education. You know what I mean? But why would we step into this space?
Yeah.
You want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, and some of it goes back to what I just said. I mean, one of the things that I'm most proud of about this organization, and specifically the team and the staff that we have here, is because they have said, "Hey, I am signing up to lay my life down for those that walk through our door," and you know, a lot of that does come back to the relational component. Like we've kind of screamed from the rooftop since we've got here. Like, listen, we don't have the greatest programs, we don't have the perfect curriculum, but what we do have is a love and care for people that walk through our doors and the city that we live in. And so as we were presented with an opportunity to step into this space, I mean, really you start unpacking it and you go like, hey, what's required? Mission St. Louis is going to have a team of folks that are on the ground, and they're going to do a few things. One, they're going to build relationship, which is at the core of everything that we do, and is probably one of the highest values of our organization. Two, man, they're going to be there. So when violence happens, when tragedy happens, you get to step in one of the most like painful, hurting, most vulnerable times, and oftentimes a family's life, to be able to step in and say, hey, there's hope. And that marks us as an organization. And then the other piece is going like, hey, there are a ton of resources, and we want to make sure that people are pointed to resources that won't just pacify a felt need, but will lead to lasting change.
That's good. If I could speak to that a little bit, first, I would just shout out the amazing organization.
Because you wanted to answer you. Just play with you.
I just want to shout out amazing organizations like FCC, Mike Milton and his team who are doing amazing work. I think about organizations, a good sister, Minnow, who does work around mothers who have lost children to violence, Employment Connection, Urban League, like a million different organizations that have committed themselves to being on the ground, doing this work. And I think the reason I want to do that is because the reality is nobody has the answer.
That's right.
So we are not doing this because we got it figured out. Right? It's so multi-layered that any one person that thinks they have the idea to fix all of this, that's not who I want to work with. Because if you think your idea is the idea, you definitely too arrogant to get anything done.
That's right.
So we aren't stepping into this space because we got all the answers. I feel like as an organization, for us, our primary purpose for being in this space is because a few things we do well. One is relationship. Number two is providing a proper support for individuals. You know what I mean? And then number three is being able to lead or mobilize individuals for the work that they do. I feel like we do that very well as an organization. So when I thought about, if I'm honest, I was a little like, man, this is going to be a beast. You know what I mean?
Right.
But when we did get time to spend with those guys, and I started to realize like we are uniquely molded to be able to work with these individuals and make sure that they get the shine for the work that they do.
Right.
So just so y'all know, we talking about this now, but our goal is to bring these individuals on, make sure you guys get to meet who some of these guys are, those who are willing to be on camera, share their story, talk about what it's like to be in that world, in those trenches, because sometimes community just needs to be familiar with what's happening, because that the negative thing is going to always get publicized, but the work that they doing may not.
And Jay, that's important, man, because really we learning. We learning.
Absolutely.
We don't want to come on here like, hey, we know what to do and we feel what we're going to do. Like we learning from them.
Absolutely.
They the heroes. They the guys that we want to come alongside and say, hey, Lee, we just want to know, what do you need to be successful, and we want to provide that.
Absolutely. Shout out to the Statics. Shout out to the Toms. Shout out to the Charleses. I could start naming dudes after dudes, but shout out to y'all. I just want to take a moment to say thank y'all for giving y'all time, giving y'all energy, putting y'all life on the line. And thank y'all for the humility in which you do it. That's because y'all have received so much critique, man, so much ridicule. And then just hearing that nothing is happening, I only can imagine how difficult that may be for you. But I just want to give y'all flowers now, and I continue to do that. But thank y'all, man, for the work that y'all are doing, what y'all are committed to. And that's for any organization, but specifically just wanted to shout out those VIs and the work that you guys are doing with those pieces. Bro, can you talk a little bit about like just strategy? We're talking about violence interruption. Obviously, that goes hand in hand with community engagement. I know you're working at Mission St. Louis with that focus. So can you just speak a little bit to how those things kind of work together?
Yeah, man. And like we said, the objective for this particular, violence intervention is cease the violence, or to get it to decrease.
Mm-hmm.
But my part is that we don't want it to just be those who are engaged in these activities and the interrupters. We want the whole community to know we there. We want the whole community. We want this to be a community kind of thing where they know we there. Where we're not just coming when something happened. We want to have concerts. We want to get into the community and just have a forum and ask like, hey, what is it that you need from us? And we want them to know our face. Again, like Josh said, we want them to know we love you. From the little kids running around, maybe passing out candy, to the elderly, where they can benefit for some of our programs, like, home repair and stuff like that. So that's my piece, man. That wanting to really get to know the community as a whole. And then two, man, really loving on them dudes, man. Uniquely from my background, like I care about people who are going to be doing the work, these brothers. And I want to get to know them. I want to see what they need. We want to be able to provide for them, if it's some emotional stuff that they need, like counseling or things like that, because they going in the trenches, man. This is real hard work. It's traumatic stuff, man. And we want to care for them well. And I want to be, a big part of that.
Yeah. So for those that may not be familiar, this violence interruption program is put specifically in place by the city. And there's been efforts going on for a few years around this. How do we address violence in specific neighborhoods, right? And targeted neighborhoods where data tells us that this is the most violence-stricken areas, right? And then they mobilize into those particular areas. So what we have the beauty of being able to be a part of is to walk alongside these men who have already been doing this work. And as an organization, what we will kind of be doing is helping them to strategically plan, making sure that they're supported as they do the work, making sure that there's a care team around the individuals that are doing the work, making sure that they're paid, well, as a result of that work. And really, I feel like for us, what kind of put us in this position is just being able to mobilize those individuals, because when you have, leaders like that, these guys don't need to be, micromanaged as much as they need to be led and mobilized. So my ability to have conversations with some of these guys just helps me understand a little bit more as an organization, some of what we'll be able to do. So there are 3 target areas primarily, which will be Dutchtown, Wells Goodfellow, and Walnut Park. So these have in the past been, areas that they have focused on. That there will be footprints in each one of those areas. And then there will eventually be a 4th zone that will have a footprint as well. And all of that is determined by data that shows, the violence that takes place in those areas. So once you have those 3 or let's say 4 sites, then you mobilize violence interrupters that these are individuals. If they go, say, for example, you have individuals in Wells Goodfellow, the individuals working in that community are going to be from that community. They have to know the blocks. They need to know the dudes that's still in the cars, know the dudes that's shooting the guns, know the dudes that's selling the dope. They out here and they know those individuals because most of them, well, pretty much all of them once were those individuals. So those individuals are mobilized into those communities. They spend time building relationships. Utilizing those relationships to help. The primary goal is to try to prevent situations before they take place. Right. The next step is, if you can't prevent it before it takes place, to de-escalate that situation. And then in some cases, something has happened. So you want to intervene in that situation. Right. And really try to keep it from becoming something worse. Yep. So that's kind of the work as a whole, kind of what we see taking place. And so we're kind of going through the process of getting ready to re-interview people. It'll be about 20 guys. It could be men or women hired to do this particular work. Those individuals will be trained. We'll be going into those specific communities to hear from the community about those individuals, make sure they're familiar with who they are. And then those individuals will have sites or satellite offices that exist in those communities that they can kind of work out of.
Yeah.
Hey, bro, I want you to talk about, because we had the privilege of going to Baltimore. We had a good time. You did some karaoke and everything. But I want you to talk about, man, I was blown away. And that was really my first encounter with or hearing about or even actually tangibly seeing the work that they do and seeing that, I mean, and just kind of talk about what we saw in Baltimore.
Absolutely, man. So we did have a chance to go to Baltimore, and that was really an eye-opening experience. I think for me, it was the same. First time really kind of seeing the site. And what's really interesting is that it was led by a woman. The lead of that team was a woman who was just a beast. I think her name was it Lisa or I can't even think of her name, but man, she was an absolute beast, and she led a team of 5 men. All of those individuals were from that community. They were in the heart of that community. And my walk away was this. They didn't talk a lot about strategy. They didn't talk a lot about model. They talked a lot about passion, heart, and commitment. You know what I mean? Like, so they didn't say, hey, you need to A, B, C, D. They said, first, we need to love each other. I need to know that we got each other back. You know what I mean? When you out here in the streets trying to intervene in situations, you need to know that the person next to you is going to make sure you good. Number 2, they talked about how they have to constantly be on that block. Like they are there every day. They phones don't go off. Ain't no clock out. You know what I mean, for them. So they get phone calls at all times of the night. And I was just really moved by the passion that they had to be committed to the work. I'm sure you could add.
I mean, no, you said it, bro. And one of the things that I took away from it, man, was they unified. I mean, they were united in the mission. And I think that's something that you were up front saying you want to unify. It's not like this going to be separate locations and individuals. This is one unit dispersed into different areas. And I think that's a beautiful, I mean, that's a beautiful vision for us to unify, man, because together we see what Colorado doing.
Right.
Sanders, he unified them, boy, they killing it.
Did.
So we want to do that, man.
Absolutely, man. So I'm excited to be able to see, where we kind of go organizationally, what our leadership can help provide. Thankful, to the city, to the mayor's office, Will Pickney, for us even having this opportunity.
That's right.
One of the things that I was taught was that real leaders don't always want the spotlight. Right. So sometimes we get opportunities that we didn't chase after, we didn't run after, we didn't pine for. Some leadership opportunities are presented to you in times where you don't even feel like you belong in that space. Yeah. And I would say that's pretty much what happened with us in a lot of ways. Like we had to step up. We were prepared to step up. I don't think we weren't looking forward to, hey, we want to be the guys doing this piece. But I feel like the way that it kind of worked out to me, kind of spoke and said, this is where we're supposed to be. Yeah. And I'll share this little tidbit. About 2 weeks ago, I was in meditation. I get up in the mornings. I try to have some meditation time. And man, this whole piece has really been a wrestle, like just thinking through, not wanting to step on toes, wanting to respect people who've already done the work, wanting to respect the VIs who are out here on the ground. And there was just like a calm that kind of rested in my spirit that said, like, you are where you're supposed to be. You are exactly where you're supposed to be. And then I think it was the next day or that same day is when we met with the guys. And man, it went way better than I expected it to go. So I say all that to say, maybe there's a leader that's watching this and you done been put in some circumstance, a position, you don't feel like you qualify, you don't feel like you got what's needed.
Welcome
you may leadership. Not even, man, welcome. Even if you don't feel like you belong, I'm sure all of us in the positions we carry find ourselves in those spaces, and even organizationally, we found ourselves in that space now, but that does not always mean you're not ready.
That's right.
Sometimes it means that you are. You know what I mean? And you've been chilling and it's time to activate. Yeah. So that's what's happened for us, man.
Yeah, and I will add this. Like, man, it gives me great hope as we step into new waters for us. When I look at the two of you guys leading this out, the heart behind it, when we look at the team. And so I don't know what you think about when you think about our city. I don't know what you think about when you think about the neighborhoods that we've talked about, but you cannot listen to what we're saying without being hopeful. And if you knew what we know, you would have great hope too. And so be careful what you believe about this city. Be careful what you watch on the news or read in the newspaper, because there are people laying their lives down for the heart and for the good of the city.
That's very true. And don't hear us saying that there aren't problems in the
Correct.
city. You know what I mean? I just choose not to throw rocks at all the problems. You know what I mean? I choose to run after the solutions.
Yep.
So, we could talk about who did things wrong, who did things right. All we know is that there are things still happening that need us to respond to. And we feel a responsibility to respond to those situations and then equip individuals who can respond to those situations as well. So I'm always commending everybody that's doing this work that has a heart for it, because you can't teach passion. You know what I mean? That's something you can't teach. You know what I mean?
Courage. I mean, come on, man.
That's natural in you.
Man. Yeah.
So in closing, man, if y'all had one thing that you would want to communicate to the person that may be watching or listening to this around some of what we see, even if it's just a way you would encourage them, what would that be for you?
Man, one, I would say, man, please be praying for this. I would say, let's not be fooled by the fact that this is dangerous, that this is complicated, that this takes a level of wisdom that is beyond anybody. And what you have. And so, man, I was just saying, if you're watching this from the outside, I said it earlier, man, I want you to be hopeful, and two, I want you to be praying.
Yeah, man. I echo that prayer, definitely. And if you from those strategic areas, Dutchtown, Wells, Goodfellow, Walnut Park, hey, we want to get to know you.
Yeah.
Come reach out to us. You can come up here and meet us. We're not hard to find. We want to dialogue with you. We want, like I said, we want it to be a community thing. If you have questions, you have concerns, if you in leadership in those communities, all the persons, we want to meet with you. We want to talk to you. So we're available to you.
Yeah, man. I just would say patience. The violence that's taking place in our city won't change in a year, from a year contract, from a 3-year contract. And I would say just be patient with these brothers. They are out here, and as crime is continuing to do what it's doing, they're trying to work against that wave. So if you can, when you do choose to critique, might I plead with you to add some grace, to talk a little bit about the good things that have been done. Yep. We want you to critique what's taking place, right? Like we want to be held. We want our feet to be held to the fire in terms of doing this work. But I ask that as you critique, be mindful that these are real people that are giving their real time, their real lives, and their real energy to doing this work. And it is very unrewarding work. So if we can, as a city, begin to rally around these individuals and make sure that we highlight the work that they are actually doing, even for the media, Channel 4, Channel 2, Channel 5, anybody that might come across this and watch it. Can we encourage you? Can we employ you? I can't tell you what to stop. Of course, you're going to show the things that take place, but can I employ you to find these individuals and talk about the good things that they did, the de-escalations that have taken place, the people that have been, relocated to keep things from going crazy. Let's make sure to give a balanced perspective of the work that's being done, so that way we can feed hope into one another. Good. So, man, say that to say this, man. Thank y'all for everybody that's made the choice to be the city, to love the city. We got a lot of things coming up, man. Our gala, which will be September the 30th. So, man, that's going to be crazy, man. Y'all might see us a little more fly than y'all see us right now. You know what I mean? Hey, Sam, absolutely. So we got that coming up. We got a basketball tournament that'll be coming up, the 3-on-3. That'll be at Harris Stowe. Stand Power Awards.
Hey, if you hoop, you got to be there. If you say you got the 3 that can do come on, sign up for it. Go on our website.
Absolutely, man. So make sure y'all stay plugged in. We would love to hear y'all thoughts. We know it's a lot of thoughts about violence. Leave some comments. Make sure you like and make sure you subscribe. We love to connect to you, man. So thanks for having us.
I'm about to kill that Euro right there.
Oh, man. He been waiting. I think I'm going to continue the podcast a little bit longer. Turn it into a whole year.
Love y'all, man. Thanks for tuning in.
Holla.